So y'all talking about Charlie Kirk is in heaven. He's with our Savior now. So I'm definitely getting in that hole. If he's in heaven, I'm going to heaven. Like, what?
The only question that I really have about all of this is, did it just cut to black for him? Kind of like the ending of Sopranos, or what? Like, was he just sitting there and talking about, oh, gang violence?
People always say the truth comes out in crisis. But here's the thing. In America, crisis doesn't bring truth. It brings scapegoats. Charlie Kirk was unalived. That's the crisis. But instead of facing what actually happened, the country went straight to the reflex it always uses. Blame black people. The shooter wasn't black. The campus wasn't black. The ideology wasn't black. But yet, HBCUs were the first to be targeted. That's not some weird coincidence. That's a playbook. A system that protects white violence at all costs and use black existence as the default punching bag.
HBCUs are getting threatened because a racist white man got shot by another white man at a white-ass college in a white-ass state. America is something else.
So today, I want to slow this all the way down because this isn't just about Charlie Kirk getting unalived. This is about the way America reacts when white violence is exposed and the way it drags black people into the fire even when we had nothing to do with it. First, let's talk about what happened. Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, was on stage at Utah Valley University for his American comeback tour. He's taking questions, doing his usual routine when suddenly one shot, straight to the neck, students run, chaos everywhere, Kirk collapses, he's rushed to the hospital, he dies. At first, it looked like the case was wide open. Police had no suspect in custody. 2 people were briefly held and cleared. The FBI released photos of a young man in a cap and sunglasses and a black shirt, offered a $100,000 reward, and showed off a rifle found wrapped in a towel in the woods. Officials even admitted they had high-quality videos of the shooter moving through stairwells, climbing rooftops, and disappearing into a neighborhood.
So here you see the suspect ran behind that upper building. He's going to come out on the right, moves to this far right corner. As he does, he's going to climb off the edge and then drop down to the ground. As he did that, he left some palm impressions. There's some smudges, some places we're looking to collect DNA. There's a shoe imprint. Here you see the suspect after dropping off the building. He moved around across this grassy area, around the parking lot. We're going to pan to the right. After he crosses the street, this is where he moves over into the wooded area.
But now there's a shift. Authorities have confirmed they have a suspect in custody, a 22-year-old male from Utah named Tyler Robinson. He was identified after a tip from someone close to his family. And investigators say the weapon tied to the shooting, a high-powered bolt-action rifle, has been matched to him. So yes, someone's been caught. But here's the real question. Even with a white suspect behind bars, why were black students still the first to face retaliation?
So they arrested the person who assassinated Charlie Kirk. He is a 22-year-old from Utah named Tyler Robinson. His father is a veteran of the sheriff's department. He was a law enforcement officer, and apparently Tyler ended up confessing to his father, and then his father organized him actually turning himself in to law enforcement. And so we do now have confirmation that it was 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, not a member of an HBCU, not a Muslim, not a DEI recipient, not an immigrant, but just a normal white kid from Utah, 22 years old, named Tyler Robinson, who was the one who ended up, who was the alleged person who assassinated Donald Trump, who assassinated Charlie Kirk.
Now, here's where the reflex that I was talking about kicks in. Kirk was unalived at a PWI, the suspect unknown. And yet the very next day, HBCUs across the country went into lockdown. Alabama State, Hampton, Virginia State, Bethune-Cookman, Clark Atlanta, Southern, all hit with bomb threats, students sheltering in place, police crawling all over campuses, classes canceled. Why? Because in the mind of Kirk's most radicalized supporters, blackness is the default threat. Black people are the automatic suspects, even when we weren't anywhere near the crime scene. Now, if this sounds crazy, that's because it is. Because it's not new, it's historical. Whenever white people feel embarrassed, defeated, or harmed, the retaliation always lands on us. In 1910, when Jack Johnson beat Jim Jeffries in the heavyweight boxing match, white mobs rioted in over 25 cities. Black people were lynched just for celebrating. In 1866, black men peacefully marched in New Orleans for voting rights. White mobs and police responded with mass slaughters. Nearly 200 black people died or wounded. In 1921, Tulsa's Greenwood district, known as Black Wall Street, was destroyed after a false accusation against a black teenager. Hundreds killed, thousands displaced, wealth erased. And not even 2 years ago, during Black History Month, HBCUs were hit with dozens of bomb threats. No suspects, no charges, just fear pumped into black institutions for daring to exist. The formula hasn't changed in over 100 years. 1, a white figure loses power or status. 2, whiteness itself doesn't get questioned. And 3, black people pay the price. That's exactly what we're watching play out with Charlie Kirk's death.
Okay, so boom. So Charlie Kirk is gone, and the suspect is Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old born and raised in Utah. White man, white state, white target. This was violence from inside the house, and yet somehow the aftermath landed squarely on black people. So right after the news popped that Charlie had got popped, Big Perm and his people didn't waste no time blaming everybody but somebody like Robinson, okay? Who, by the way, isn't registered with any political party, hasn't voted, and we don't know how long according to public records. And then according to investigators, I guess had on similar clothes to the ones the suspect had on the day of the shooting, whatever that's supposed to mean. Instead of owning the violence in their own ranks, Big Perm blamed the lunatic left, which we all know in MAGA speak is basically code for black people and anybody who look like they listen to Beyonce. And the results are terrifying because within hours, at least 6 HBCUs, Clark, Hampton, Alabama State, Southern University, Bethune-Cookman, somebody asked Auntie Tia if her baby is okay. I think he played football there. Virginia State, and they were all basically hit with threats. And then Spelman decided to put a shelter in place because of its proximity to Clark. So all these campuses had to lock down. Students were terrified, okay? Can you imagine being a 19-year-old freshman just trying to go get you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from the dining hall, and now all of a sudden you get a message that you got a shelter in place because some white man in Utah shot Charlie Kirk? That's the danger. That's the spillover. Black folks carry the weight of crimes we didn't commit, threats we didn't send, and violence we did not cause. And this time, it ain't even a stretch, baby. It's crazy. It's off the chain, okay? Think about it. A white man killed another white man in a crowd of mostly white people, and still somehow, black students, hundreds of miles away, are forced to pay the price. This is the twisted logic of American politics. When whiteness pulls the trigger, blackness takes the bullet. So now let's be crystal clear, okay? Tyler Robinson didn't just endanger the people at that rally. He lit the match that put black people across this country in the crosshairs. Because in America, the crime doesn't have to involve us for the consequences to find us anyway.
Let's be clear. HBCUs weren't targeted randomly. They were targeted because they mean something. They're more than schools. They're symbols of black excellence, of history, of independence. They carry the weight of cultural pride. And Kirk's movement, he built a career tearing those things down, fighting affirmative action, mocking black studies, trying to erase black intellectual spaces. So when he was unalived, even with zero evidence pointing to black involvement, the retaliation landed exactly where his ideology always wanted it to, on us.
Hey, Clear folks, so do y'all know that the person that unalived Charlie Kirk is one of y'all? Why is there 6 black historic colleges getting attacked because of this situation? It was y'all. One of y'all. Not one of us. One of y'all. You see where the confusion starts to appear?
And here's where the irony is almost too thick to process. The last words out of Charlie Kirk's mouth before he was unalived were, counting or not counting gang violence.
The dialogue that was being exchanged before Charlie Kirk was shot, fatally shot, is wild. I'm going to show you what was said. So he was at a rally, people were asking him questions, and this is what the dialogue stated. It said, the audience member asked, do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years? In which he replied, too many. Now, his whole rally was called Prove Me Wrong, just to give you a little bit of context. That same audience member went on to say, the number is 5, and proceeded to ask if Kirk knows how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years. His response? Counting or not counting gang violence. Then the impact hit. The answer to that question was 5,700, and it's just so ironic. This is how irony works. It's how irony works. If you don't understand irony, just go listen to Alanis Morissette. But it's just so crazy that was his answer. The last words that came out of that man's mouth was violence. And whether you like to believe it or not, that is the only thing that could come about with bearing arms, weapons of mass destruction.
Think about that. The question he was asked was about mass shooters in America, a real question about culture and accountability, and Kirk's response was a dog whistle. He tried to drag it away from white violence and stick it on black communities by saying gang violence. Seconds later, he was unalived, almost certainly not by a black person, but the narrative he built, it kept running without him. His followers turned around and punished black colleges. Even in death, his scapegoat machine kept working.
I need y'all to stop calling blatant racism a difference in opinion. An opinion is Sprite is better than Pepsi, right? That's an opinion. You know what's not an opinion? That black people are inherently violent and commit 50% of the crime because you're overusing bullshit statistics to justify your bigotry. That's not an opinion. Anyway, say hi to Queen Elizabeth for me.
Now, here's something we got to talk about: the silence. If the shooter had been black, the media would have had mugshots, criminal records, and think pieces about urban crime before Kirk's body was cold. But with a non-black suspect, nothing. No racial framing, no discussion of white pathology, no calls for white-on-white accountability, just generic debates about guns and mental health. That's the narrative gap. When whiteness is violent, it disappears. And this is where we flip the question. For decades, black people have been forced to answer for black-on-black crime. Well, do white people have white-on-white crime yet? Because school shootings, domestic terrorism, political assassinations, mass shootings, these aren't random. They're cultural. But no one ever demands white America to explain themselves. This is why Kirk's gang violence deflection was so calculated, because the numbers don't lie. When you strip out gang violence and look only at mass public shootings, the one meant to terrorize communities, here's what you see. Black 21%, Latino 8%, Asian 6%, other 14%, white 51%, closer to 80% if you count groups aligned with white culture and power. That's the ecosystem driving mass shootings, white or white adjacent. Kirk knew it, his audience knew it, so he tried to blur the lines by lumping survival-driven gang shootings in with ideological terror. That way, white shooters stay hidden behind the numbers. This is also why separating gang violence from mass shootings is so important. Gang shootings usually come from personal beefs, territory, or survival. Mass shootings, though, those are ideological. They're about politics, race, religion, grievances. Mix the two together and you hide the real trend. You let white mass shooters disappear into the data, and you let the system pretend the threat is urban gangs instead of suburban basements.
If all you have to defend somebody with after they die is the fact that they had a wife and kids, that kind of tells you a lot about that person. Nobody's talking about the importance of his work or the legacy he's leaving behind, because there is none.
That motherfucker doesn't even believe. That motherfucker doesn't even believe in empathy. What do you want my case for? This is what he would have wanted. He died doing what he believed in.
Kirk's last words weren't just a dodge. They were the blueprint for how this whole story would play out. Scapegoat black people, hide white accountability. So let's call it what it is. Charlie Kirk spent his career blaming gang violence, fatherlessness, urban decay for America's problems. But when he was unalived, not by a black person, not by a black institution, his followers still turned on us. They locked down our campuses, they threatened our schools, they turned grief into racial retaliation. This isn't just about justice. It's about scapegoating. This isn't just about safety. It's about narrative control. control. And this isn't new. It's just louder now. And this is, the culture debrief. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I talk about Black news all the time, so just stick around and support.